Hi, everyone. So, yesterday, the mayor announced that he was going to propose a new number to City Council, lowering his salary or the mayoral salary request from $285,000 per year to $225,000 per year. And I thought I would pass along my thoughts on this. So, putting aside for the moment whether or not the numbers make sense, because there'll be time to dig into that later, um, in my opinion, it's clear that Mayor Koch is trying to, in a way, buy a reprieve uh, for the city councilors that he enjoys working with. Um, so, the first thing I want to point out is the mayor keeps reminding people that he is being paid the $159,000 figure and not the $285,000 figure that's widely reported, he says. And that's true. He deferred his raise. But if anyone believes that he's being paid the higher number, or he feels that it's being reported that way, I think he has to take some of the blame for this because the mayor insisted that the numbers that City Council unanimously voted in last summer at 285 stay in the budget, stay the official number in a way. Um, it's true that, at least in the press, the mayor and City Council voluntarily deferred their raises until after their next election, which for the city council is coming up in a couple days, and for the mayor won't be until 2027. And they did agree to defer them partially, at least partially, because of an ethics commission investigation. And but when people would ask, "Are you going to undo the legislation? Are you going to take, are you going to pass some legislation saying that you're deferring?" It was always no, and that he wanted to keep the old numbers, the high numbers that they voted on last year in the budget to remind people of what they should be. So I think some of that confusion, if there really is a lot of confusion, I don't really know anybody who thinks he's being paid $285,000 right now. But I understand that I roll with a certain circle of people who are very informed about this issue. But if anyone is confused, I think that's partly why. So I just wanted to mention that. So the major issue with this raise has not just been the dollar amount. 285,000 was staggering, but the deeper issue is how it was done. He put out a report by the Dormanson Consulting Company, which doesn't seem to, at least online, exist anymore. But there was no public input. There was no hearings. There was no real deliberation from the city council. If you go back to 2015 and watch when the mayor got his last raise, there was pushback. Councilor Gutrow at the time said, "I don't know anybody who gets a 30% raise." They haggled and they got to a certain number. Nothing like that happened last summer. It's a crazy high raise number, and there was no debate or pushback from the city council. So that was a lot of the outrage, was based off of, like, it almost looked like a collusion where, like, the mayor gives the councilors a big raise, they give him a big raise, everybody's happy, and this huge raise that is only affecting 10 people in the entire government was just happens to be, like, proposed and approved by those same 10 people. It's no wonder that ethics had an issue with it. So by lowering the figure to 225, the mayor is again skipping this process. It's a better number for sure, but it's still just a number he picked. It was not discussed, debated, or derived from any logical standard that I know of. It continues the pattern of excluding residents from the process and from the decisions that affect them. And that is a tendency in our current local government that extends far beyond this one issue. So right now, Quincy has a very compliant, I call it a sycophantic city council. They vote the way the mayor wants. They rarely question anything. And he calls them, like, a good partner in the process. Last week when he gave his budget presentation, he congratulated them on how well things are going because they've been a big part of everything.
We're financially sound. This is a great story, and you've been a part of it. I thank the councils here for that. We're thoughtful, we debate, and we make good decisions. And this body is a partner in that. I can't spend $10 without your approval. So I appreciate the cooperation that we've had on a number of these projects.
So he considers them a partner in this governance. But what does that partnership mean? It seems like in the mayor's world, it means staying quiet, saying yes, and just following the program. But that might be about to change. The upcoming council could look very different in January. There are serious, credible challengers in a few different wards. Former Councillor Mahoney looks poised to take back her seat. I understand the mayor's desire to, keep his status quo. It's worked out well for him as far as the decisions he wants to make. So, in short, the dynamic of Quincy local government could be very different in a few months. Might not be, but it really could be. So I just wanted to talk about that because how did we get here? Well, there is an alternate timeline. If you watch any science fiction, there's an alternate timeline where back in the summer of 2024, late spring 2024, the mayor proposes that large salary, $285, but he invites public comment and he has public hearings, and he hears from the residents that the number's too high. The people that showed up with signs, instead of getting yelled at.
Whoever keeps talking, please stop with the comments and let me finish. And we're not going to have any talking out of the audience. I asked right at the beginning for respect and to keep the issues between us here, so I don't want to hear any more comments.
By the city council. They're listened to. And then maybe he lowers the number. Maybe he lowers it to something like 225. But whatever it is, there's a different number, and it's collaborative with the people instead of just inflicted upon them. And it follows a public process, and people feel heard. And then there's still another alternate timeline where the city council does its job. And then rather than carrying water for the mayor, they push back. They say a 79% raise is not sane and not professional, does not meet the fiduciary standards we owe the public. They hold hearings, invite feedback, and land on a more rational figure. Same thing. Maybe they come up with a number that comes from past raises for other employees or a consumer price index like I was mentioning. They show the math. And in either of those timelines, the mayor and council begin receiving their new salaries earlier, like I talked about. They have defensible logic and a transparent process. And like I said, there'll be like a Goldilocks range of reactions. There's going to be citizens who say, this is way too high. And there's going to be citizens that say, hey, this is kind of low. You deserve more. And then there's going to be citizens that think that's just right. But whatever happens, it's not what this turned out to be, But that's not the timeline we're in, neither one of them. In our realistic timeline, the mayor forced through a 79% raise with no regard for public opinion. When challenged, he waved it away and called critics like myself naysayers and said it's just that they don't like me. In our real timeline, the city council flushed its credibility and cashed in its independence for brownie points with the mayor. And they didn't shape the mayor's number. They didn't even question it. They just voted yes. Now, with the election pressure rising and reputations on the line, the mayor drops his number. And not because the council asked him to, not because the public was heard, but because his political calculus has changed. And the mayor may hope this gesture will shield some of his allies from the fallout. Fallout that started with the raise, but also includes the statues that he bought without telling anybody that are Catholic saints. What he said on the Dan Ray interview, granite links, a number of things that people are upset about. But I don't think this saves his allies. I think they spent the last 15 months defending the indefensible. They voted unanimously for that 285,000 figure. They didn't push him down. In the last 15 months, they didn't do anything to bring that number down. He pulled it down himself. So what has the city council done to earn any reprieve? In my opinion, nothing. I think the mayor's sudden lowering of the number makes them look worse because they've been defending 285,000 for over a year. Now they'll pivot and defend 225,000. It'll be the same cheerleading with a new script, a new number. They hitch themselves to the mayor's coattails, and the fabric is fraying.